In the heard this story to pastors who met, comparing notes. One asked the other, how many active members do you have? And he said, all are active. Some for the Lord, and the others for Satan. One who's been active for Satan is to become a tale bearer, to carry news back and forth between people. Leviticus 19:16, God says, don't do that. Now, normally, when we hear tale bearer, some men lock off. That's for the ladies. Well, the word here is masculine. And most commands given in the Old Testament are addressed to men. The talebearer fuels strife. The word says, Proverbs 26:20, where no wood is, the fire goes out. Where there's no talebearer, the strife ceases. I've seen this happen in my own life, where a talebearer brings news back and forth and watches people fight it out. So Brother X would come to me, tell me what somebody else did, and I'd be very angry at this brother who did these bad things to me. But as time went on, something clicked. So he'd bring news to me, I'd react, you take my reaction back to the other person. So it's back and forth, and he's enjoying the conflict. But you see, as he's doing that, he is sowing discord among brethren. And God hates that, because discord is very dangerous. It wreaks havoc among the people of God. I'm going to show us 3 reasons for saying this, why we should not in any way be at two in the devil's hands to carry news back and forth. And by the way, this is, who bring news to you will carry news on you. So keep that in mind as well, as we examine this whole issue of talebearing and how it sows discord. Now, first of all, discord takes away enjoyment. Now, contrary to what the devil wants us to believe, God's plan for us is to have joy. He put man in a garden called Eden, and Eden means delight. Paul tells us, 1 Timothy 6:17, God gives richly all things to enjoy. So we are meant to enjoy the things God has put here for us. He has no plan to prompt our style or to make our lives miserable. We should be people who experience joy. He wants us to enjoy life in the physical family. Psalm 68:6 says, he puts the lonely in families. We are meant to enjoy being together as a family. Where there's love and harmony, the family is a wonderful place to be. And now my grandfather, I'm seeing this in a whole new light. It's just wonderful to be in a family where there's love and harmony. But when there's discord, it's a miserable place to be. I recall being in a certain country some years ago, and I went to a lovely house. Got some money. There was fine food, but very clearly, man and wife were not getting along together. I saw arrogance, rudeness, all that in the husband in particular. And you know what? I did not enjoy the meal. It was a bad atmosphere, even though there was wealth. Contrast this to another country I went to, and it was clear that in that family, there was not much money. but I saw warmth. I saw love, and that family became my friends for life. You see, the word says, better a dry crust, I would say to dry bread, and peace and quiet than a house of feasting where there is strife. You see, when there is strife, it spoils everything that's there. Life, the family is meant to be enjoyed. If you don't want to go home on something wrong, you should want to be home with your family. So when somebody sets wife against husband, brother against brother, etc., you are going against what God wants. You are taking away the enjoyment that He wants people to have in the physical family. But also, beloved, He wants us to enjoy life in the spiritual family. When you are born again, John 1:12, you become a child of God. You are part of God's family. And you know what? We are meant to refresh one another as we come together. We are happy to be together with God's people, and we encourage one another. Philemon verse 7, that's what Paul says. That, the saints are refreshed by you. When we come together as a church, it's to experience the joy of the Lord's presence. You see, the real nice time is not in the dance hall, not on the block or whatever it is. It is in God's presence, among God's people. The church should be a happy place. If you go back to Acts when things started, you discover there that this was a joyful church. Acts 2:46. And breaking bread from house to house, they did eat food with gladness and singleness of heart. But when there is discord in the church, then the gathering becomes a place of heaviness and tension. I remember clearly, some churches ago years ago, we had a Sunday school class, Sunday afternoon, an adult class. There's one guy in particular, he was just a disruptive, obnoxious person. You disagree with him on a point, he wants to eat you up. And we would wish he would come to that class every Sunday. But guess what? Every Sunday he was there. It was just a pain. Just a pain to have him in that class because of the discord he brought to the group. You see, what discord does is to create an unpleasant atmosphere. You see, unity among brethren is like a sweet perfume. That's in Psalm 133. But discord is like a stench, a bad smell that make you want to hold your nose. When you're sowing discord in the church, you are creating that bad atmosphere. God hates that. You see, beloved, strife among brethren is just plain inappropriate. It doesn't belong. That is what it is. Abraham says to God, let us not have any strife. You know why? We are brethren, so we're not supposed to be fighting. Now think of it this way. We are the church. We are part of the body of Christ. Okay, the body, that's the image you're using. Suppose your nose and your mouth can't get along. You see the problem? You're right next to each other and you cannot get along. That is why God hates sowing discord among brethren. It takes away enjoyment and brings about pain. God hates that. Anyone who spoils the enjoyment of God to come together is an agent of the enemy. Secondly, discord reduces effectiveness. Genesis 11, verse 1 to 9 is the account of the Tower of Babel. Now, for a project to really succeed, you got to work together. Now, these people, they had one language at a time, and they had one purpose to build this tower. It was meant to be a monument to human pride and all of that. And God came down and confused their language, just mixed up everything, and the project could not go forward. Listen, beloved. When there's discord among brethren, it's like they're speaking different languages. That's what happened. And so it cannot be effective. So the energies that should go into moving the project forward go into fighting with one another. Instead of working on the project, you criticize it. I ran across this recently on the internet. Person said basically, usually those who criticize you are doing less than you. They spend more time criticizing than contributing to what is happening. When there's discord, what information might be withheld or supplies not provided, and so the project cannot go forward. So you have to have the equipment set up, and you can't find the transformer. Somebody put that somewhere you can't get it. Another case, there were two pastors working in a certain area, and one came to the church one night, it was locked, but I don't lock him out. You know, these are the things that happen when there is discord. We pull in different directions. So we want to move this battle forward. Okay? So I'm pulling this way, you pull that way, one pull that. You understand what I'm saying? And this is the problem. We do not make progress that way. So when you set a brother against a brother, sister against a sister, you reduce effectiveness. And God hates that kind of stuff. Listen, beloved. The enemy is happy when the church achieves nothing. That's what he wants. He doesn't mind movement as long as there's no progress. Take Israel in the desert. They spent 38 years. They were moving, weren't they? But going wrong and wrong in circles. When there's discord, that's what happens. We're not moving forward. You see, when there is discord, we're reactive, but not effective. So we are doing things, but not achieving anything. It's a common theme in American crime movies, where different agencies, say the FBI, the local police, the DA's office, everybody fighting over who's in charge of the investigation. And while they're fighting, the crime remains unsolved. And this is not the problem. Fighting over this, over that. And we're not getting anywhere. So it's against this background, beloved, we must examine what Paul said in Philippians 4, 2-3, to Euodia and Syntyche, two ladies who are loggerheads in the Philippian church. Now, first of all, they had labored of Paul in the gospel. Philippians 4, verse 3. In gospel ministry, beloved, teamwork makes the dream work. Paul was never a lone ranger. You check it out carefully. There were all these people with him. He had Silas, he had Timothy, Titus, and others. There were all these people working along with Paul in the ministry. And that's God's way for evangelizing. It's partnership. In Luke 5, for example, when Peter was to launch into the deep, and they caught this large, draft of fish. You know what he had to do? Call his partners in the other boat. It's not just me. You bring in other people. You work together. You don't do it alone. I think back to my days as a student in Jamaica, going to the country to preach the gospel. Would always have with me at least one guy who could lead the singing and play guitar. I couldn't do it all by myself. It's teamwork. We got to work together. We can assume that these women with Paul achieved success as they labored. Paul could say later on at one point, Paul planted, Apollos watered, God gave the increase. So only do God's work faithfully, there will be increase, there will be fruit. Do it God's way, the word will come back void. There was success as they worked together. But then something happened. On the verse 2, they were loggerheads. I don't know what happened, not told. But those who had been teammates were not fighting. Paul says, I beg you, be of one mind in the Lord. Maybe one wants to go here, one wants to go there. Maybe one wants to do this, one wants to do that. Whatever the differences were, here's the bottom line. The work of God was being hindered. We can't be effective if we're pulling and tugging, fighting ourselves. And so imagine now in that Philippian church, somebody going back and forth between you and Syntyche, carrying news. What are you doing when you do that? You keep them further and further apart. So God hates the talebearer, the one who keeps back and forth. You know what you do, and so on. That's dangerous, that's deadly. It reduces our effectiveness. God hates it. Finally, discord threatens our very existence. And in a sense, it's a climatic statement. It's where we're going to reach if there's intervention. If we don't address lack of enjoyment, lack of effectiveness, we end up being destroyed. Mark 3:25, the house divided will not stand. I remember when we were in the States back in the 80s, late 80s, looking for a church of fellowship. And we saw a name that we thought, okay, that's somewhere we could go. When we did get there, there was no church. We were told virgins fought and fought and fought until the church closed down. What this God does. You see, beloved, the worst kind of war is a civil war. Whatever you destroy belongs to the same country. So I'm fighting with my wife. I mash up the TV, she mash up the fridge. We mash up and mash up everything. It all belongs to us. The worst kind of war. Our survival depends on staying together, living in peace and harmony. It is vital. For this story of a farmer who had 7 sons who were always fighting. And he decided he would do something to teach them a lesson, so to speak. And he got 7 sticks and tied them together and gave them to the strongest of the sons and said, break them. Of course, he tried with all his strength, and he could not break the 76 head again. Took him apart, give him one by one, the weakest of the sons, and he broke every single one. You see, when you sow discord, you're trying to get people to function as individual sticks. You see, when you do that, you're missing the point, because you're making me feel that Dwayne is my enemy. My enemy is not Dwayne. My enemy is Satan. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. So even when this person rubs it the wrong way, look beyond that person and see the real enemy who's trying to destroy the work of God. You see, when you sow discord, you become the enemy's tool. The strategy used by the colonialists in the past, called divide and conquer. Very often they're outnumbered by people that they come in to conquer you. They'll get into a fight among themselves, and half the battle is won already. That's what the enemy tries to work. As we fight among ourselves, then he is allowed to just do what he wants. God's people are called to be peacemakers. Romans 14:19, let us therefore follow after the things that make for peace. And one way of making peace, of preserving peace, is to refuse to be a talebearer. It's amazing, you know, how people who are not at a meeting can tell you everything that happened at the meeting. And that's why some people become enemies. Because I know you voted against my project. And that's what happens. Things don't stay where they should stay. But that's going to carry news. The child of God seeks to bring people together, not to push them apart. So Paul is beseeching you and Timothy. You have one man in law. He understood his role as a peacemaker. So as we close this message, beloved, it's up to us to decide whether to be active for the Lord or active for Satan. We're not neutral. When we carry news back and forth, push people further and further apart, we are doing what God hates. We are active for Satan. When we reject it, when people come to you with news or you got a desire to carry news, say, no, it's not for me to do this. I don't want to be Satan's tool. Reject that and seek rather to bring people together. Then you have been active for the Lord. So I use the word Deuteronomy 30, 19, I think it is. I've set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose